Welcome back to Arc Tutorials. This is React.js full tutorial series for absolute beginners. We started learning all the commonly used hooks. In the last two episodes, I gave you the list of all the top 20 hooks that I'll be covering, and I also covered use state. Today is the second hook that I'm covering, which is use effect. This is part 25 of the React complete tutorial playlist. Make sure that you go through all the episodes in order to learn React from scratch as a beginner to advanced. So far, all these things I've covered, and today we are learning use effect hook. Alright, so these are the top list of top 20 hooks that I am covering as part of this particular series. We are on number second, use effect. Alright, so what is use effect? Use effect is a React hook used for handling side effects in a functional components. Now what does this line mean? It means, let's say there are certain things that are happening in the application. Let's say for example user clicks on premium brand, or let's say the count increases from pagination from 5 to 10, or let's say when user submits makes an API call and that call gets you data back, what you should do with it, and much more. These are all called side effects. That means what should happen when some functionality happens in the web page or in the application. That's where we will use effect hook. What are side effects? Like I said, side effects can be anything including data fetching, DOM manipulation, subscriptions, and much more. Place the side effect code inside the function provided as the first argument to use effect. So what we do is we'll pass a method as a first argument to use effect, and that's where we will write our code. We can also pass a list of dependencies, like for example what dependencies, when they are updated, if anything happens, then only you run this use effect, right? I'll cover everything in hands-on, so don't worry too much. We can use multiple times, use effect multiple times in a single component. Finally, we do the cleanup, which is to return a cleanup function after the effect has performed the cleaning up the tasks, right? This is the overview. Now let's talk about some of the real-time use cases, right? When you work in actual projects, where do you use effect? You can use it to make API request and fetch data. That's number one. You can also do handling of subscriptions and event listeners. On click, something should happen. On on subscript when you subscribe, when you get data, what should happen? You can update the document's title and metadata for SEO purposes. You can use it for authentication authorization. For example, if user is successfully authenticated, what should happen? We should redirect him to dashboard page, etc. Handling of state, form state is another, like form submitted, if the form is invalid, what should happen, etc. Same way you can use it to update local storage, like say use effect to persist state in local storage. You can use effect for animating the components. You can use it as a cleanup release. When some function is completed, you can use that for cleanup purpose. You can also use effect for triggering on URL changes, right? When URL changes, you can use effect. So these are some of the commonly used real-time use cases in projects. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and show you one of the simulation of this thing, which is, let's say, fetch data from API. So I'll show you how that's achieved, and then we will look at different configurations. Let's get started. Before we go there, I'm also building an Angular application on CRUD, which is a credit card portal. Make sure that you check out that Angular series also if you're interested. But for React, we are building a front end where we are building Arc credit cards portal. And let me start by cleaning up the UI a little bit, and then we will continue learning hooks. So I have refreshed, I have removed those things. So this is the search bar. Alright, this is where we are at right now. So what today we are doing is learning about hooks. So I'm going to go ahead, create a new folder and call them hooks. Okay, so this is where I'll put all the hooks so that you can get this data and code and practice it yourself. Okay, so the first one we'll use is useEffect.js. Okay, now you can, or I'm just going to say effect.js. Okay, now This is where we will write our hook for useEffect. Alright, so first thing we'll do is we'll import React, and we will also work with useState, and we will also need useEffect because that's what we are learning today. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write a function, and let's call that fetch data, right? Or get API, or let's just say fetch data component. So what this component does, by the name itself, it says that we will be using this particular component to make the API calls. So let's export this. This is the first thing that you should also do when you're writing components, which is always write the function definition, immediately export it. That way you know that you'll not miss it. Okay. And the next thing that I always encourage people is to write the return first. Okay. Now in this return, what we'll do, let's have a parent div that will be returned, and inside this you can add another fetch component. Okay. That is the most basic structure that you should start when you're building a component. Write a function, return and export it, because most of the times this is where the errors or the mistakes usually happen. Okay. Alright, now let's go ahead and define our data, and I'm going to say set data. Okay. Now here I'm going to use useState. That's what we learned in the previous episode, and I'm going to start saying that the initial state of the data is null. Okay, this is the initial data, and we will use set data to update this particular data set. Now we will also use one more, and let's call it is loading. Okay, and I'm going to say set is loading. All right, now this is what we will use, again use state to set that, and I'm saying that value will be true. That means it is loading. Okay, so the initial value is true. The next thing we are going to do is we will define a state to handle the errors. Okay, now this is how you would do in real-time projects, so I'm trying to come as close as to show you how real-time applications are built. Use state, and error is, again, let's set it to null for now. Okay, so I have three things which I'm setting: data, is loading, and error, because we will need error handling when we fetch the data. So now let's build an API URL equal to, and for this we can use any local host URL, or you can use a public APIs. We'll come to that in just a bit. Now let's define useEffect. Now I'm saying on every render, trigger this useEffect. That means whenever there is a rendering of the view changes, this method will be automatically called. And here we'll call this, and API URL will call, and then we'll say dot, then what should happen, we will get the response from the API. We will have it here, and dot catch, right? If something goes wrong, we will have the error state captured here. Okay, now what we can do, if we get the data, then what we can do is we'll call the set data function. What it would do is set the new value, which is the response, right? Or we can also convert it into a JSON and then process it. So what I'm going to do here is response.json. Okay, and here I'll close it, this one right here. Okay, so I'm saying dot then, and then we are getting the result, or let's put two thens, and then so we can add that, that's not a problem. So this will be a chained kind of a call, and now here we will do that mapping. Okay, so here then there are two thens now for this fetch this API, then get the response and make that response into a JSON, pass that result to this then, and then when you get the result, what we will do is we will set it here using the set data. So initial value is null. Now after the call is successful, we get the JSON response, we will set that data. And also we can say set is loading as false, because we are now loading the data. The data is here, so we are setting the loading also to false. But if it was an error, then we can set is error and put the error. And again you will need to set the loading to false because initially it is true. Alright, perfect. So see, now what this use effect will do is every time we render the view, it will be executed. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm passing empty array for now. Okay, that means execute on every render of the view. Okay, now what will we do in the template is simple. We will first just define check is loading. If it is loading, what do we need to do? We will show some, we'll show a paragraph and say content is loading. Okay, that's number one. Then what we will do, if loading, then show this. Else what we need to show, we will have to show and check if there is error, right? So we will check that error, and again we will do the same. We'll show here and say error fetching data. Okay, if this error is if it error is not there, then we actually show the real data. Okay, and what would be the data? Let's put it in div, and what we will do is say define h2 and say data from API. Okay, and so I've put multiple conditional statements. That's all I've done, nothing crazy here. So here I'm going to just say json dot stringify the data that we will get. Data. Okay, so that's close it here. So now we close this. I think I missed out on uh, the things. Let's check what I have missed. I have the div, I have the semicolon, so this is here. This is the closing div I have. H1 is here. I'm opening the is loading. Then I have the brace. Then content is loading. Then I close this here for this. Then there is a conditional statement, and then I'm checking if error. Then do this. Okay, so that's the problem. Or you can also show the error message if you want. Error dot message. Close it here, and we are not closing this one. That's the problem. So let me fix it right away. Now in this we closed the stringify, did not close. We closed the stringify. This thing is closed. JSON stringify is closed, and finally we have the return and the function. So let's check again what we are missing. Something is syntactically wrong. So we can see here it is saying expression invalid, so I'm going to build that again. So this is correct, top level is correct. Let's put h1 again. I'm sorry, I made some syntax error. Alright, so let's fetch this example. Now this is a h1, this is working fine. Now I'm checking for the condition, so let's open this and let's close it, and here is loading question mark. Now if yes, then let's show it here and say paragraph loading. Okay, else what we can do is loading this thing. Okay, so we got that piece sorted. If it is, oh, that's the problem. Why do I need this? I need it here. That was a mistake. So error. Now again let's put that. For now let me put it right away. If not, if error, if not, then show the actual data. Okay, now here we will just say div data loaded. Okay, so now this is correct. Now what we'll do, we'll display the actual errors. So we can do something like this: error dot message. That will show the error message. And here inside the div, what we can do is just do a pre-formatted text and show the JSON data, json.stringify, and we can pass the data and close the curly brace. So yeah, this code is good, neat and clean. So make sure that when you're writing multiple conditional statements, the syntax wise you're correct. Otherwise you may end up seeing some errors like how I was seeing. So far this is good. So now you see what will happen every time the view is changing, the use effect will be triggered automatically. Okay, so let's go ahead and call this in our app component, app.js. Before the main content, I'm going to add it here and import fetch from slash source slash hook slash effect. Okay, all right, so let's go back to our application, and you can see here it says unexpected token doc type is not valid, and that is true because we did not give the API URL. Okay, so I'm going to use the JSON placeholder for our fake APIs, so you can also use that. That's free of cost, and we can use something like this API for free. I'm going to copy this and get it here. Instead of to dos, I'm making it users. Okay, so now let's go back and refresh. So now you see it's getting the data, but if you click, it's getting too fast, but you can see there is a little blink which says loading, right? So what we can do is, instead of setting data, I'm going to set timeout, and I'm going to delay this action by 5 seconds so that you can clearly see the loading, right? I want you to see that. So see, now it is showing loading at the bottom. I don't know if you can clearly see. So to make it easy, I'm going to move this to the top of the main content. That way you can clearly see. So now you see it is showing loading, right? It will, and then data loaded, right? So that's the side effect. That means every time something happens, some view changes, this will be automatically triggered. Now as part of dependencies, you can pass details like which element to watch, what should be updated. If say loading is changed, you can pass that if this is changed, or whatever conditions you want to add, that when it should get triggered, you can add that as part of the list of arrays. Okay, every time that value will change, this will get triggered. So this is how you use effect hook, and extremely helpful, extremely most commonly used, especially when you're building real-time complex applications. You will end up having to use effect. Okay, this is one of the classic examples I've shown you, um, and there can be many more, like whenever there is a data change, etc. Whatever you are doing on the page, you can see that in action, right? I hope the use effect hook is clear. In the next episode, I'll cover the use context hook. Again, very useful, especially when you are working with a lot of components in real-time project. You will find use context to be your best friend. I hope you're enjoying. I hope you're learning. Please do let me know your queries, your questions. If you have doubts, I'm always eager to help you. Thank you so much for joining. Let's continue learning in the next episode. Till then, please do show me some love. Please do like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.